tell us, Dana, over the course of a day, how often would you be in the president's meetings so you would know what to say to the press or how to field questions?
Pretty much any time I wanted. I was at a dinner last night. It was a kind of a women's empowerment type dinner, and somebody said, "Wasn't it so hard to be a woman press secretary?" I said, "No, I really don't know what you're talking about." I was so empowered, and the president had told everyone that her phone call gets returned first. I had access to everybody at any time, including him. And that was one of the reasons I think that we developed such a close relationship, but I was also an effective press secretary for him at the time because I didn't have to go and ask him, "Why do you think that way?" I knew why he thought that way because I was with him for 4 years watching, listening, observing. There is one time, I don't write about this in the book, but I'll share a story with you about how I thought I was going to get fired one time. I'm the kind of person who thinks I'm always going to get fired. But on this particular day, I used to wake up at 4 a.m. and I would start basically looking at emails and responding to the press or complaining to them by 4:20. And I woke up that one morning and there was just all these emails, and it's mostly reporters from Baghdad and some from DC who've been woken up by their bureau chiefs saying, "We need an answer," because that was the day that Prime Minister Maliki had sent troops into Basra. Basra was being held by the British, but not well. And there were gangs that were torturing Sunnis, and Maliki's a Shia, so the whole world, the coalition, was trying to push Maliki into making a decision and suggesting that he would never do it. One morning we wake up, no warning whatsoever, Maliki has sent troops into Basra. The press is all going crazy. They want to know, does President Bush support this? Did he know about it? And I'm asking the reporters, can you give me 10 minutes to brush my teeth and then I'll respond to you? Like, give me a minute. And I was trying to think like who I could call at 4:30 in the morning that was going to bite my head off. But I don't know what came over me. At about 5:15, under a lot of pressure, and right before I left for the White House, I responded to to AP's Terry Hunt, one of my favorite reporters, and I gave him an on-the-record quote saying that President Bush supported Prime Minister Maliki in this action, and that it was something that the world thought Maliki would not have done, and that of course he deserves the support. Well, we had a guy that worked from the press office, and Chris Byrne is here, and he works in the press office too, and now he's out on his own with Capital Media Partners, but I roped him into helping me on my book tour, and he'll remember, so Anthony Warren was this young guy. He'd get to the office at 5:15, and he'd start sending me news clips. And all of a sudden, these clips are coming across with quotes from General Petraeus, who's furious at Prime Minister Maliki. Condi Rice, very unhappy. Department of Defense, Secretary Gates, very unhappy. And all I could think was that, oh my God, I just said that the President of the United States supports this and no one in his cabinet does. So I run downstairs and Peter, always making me my tea, and he was the worst, he was the biggest Bush defender. That he would be at the kitchen island, I can still picture it, reading the Washington Post, and he would say, "That is bullshit." Every morning. I'm like, what are you talking about?
I thought he would use the word bollocks.
No, he would be stronger than that. And then sometimes I would have to say, well, what's the topic? And I'd say, oh no, we totally deserve that. But he would always defend him no matter what. So I get downstairs, I'm like, Peter, we need to leave. Like, now it's an hour early. I'm like, no, I need to go to the White House. And I get there, and I had a national security meeting every day at 6:30 a.m. That's another reason I had the information and the access, because this national security advisor and I would start off our day together, linked arm in arm, because about 80% of the questions I got at the briefing were security related until the financial crisis. Then that switched. So I get there and the meeting's canceled because the national security advisor is in the situation room in a top secret meeting, and I didn't ask to go in, and I thought, okay, I'll just wait. So I'm waiting, go to senior staff meeting. Still, there's all these stories coming in. Now I'm getting questions of, did the president talk to Condi Rice before he said that he supported Prime Minister Maliki? And I thought, I am absolutely fired. So we go to senior staff meeting. Josh Bolton is late. That never happened. Our White House ran early, and so Josh Bolton normally would have been either early or on time. He's late. I am in so much trouble. I'm just waiting for the call, like, Dana, could you go to the Oval? Well, Josh comes in, he doesn't sit down, and he says, I want you all to know I've just come from the Oval Office. And President Bush wants everyone in here to know that anyone who suggests that he does not support Prime Minister Maliki is wrong. And I said it. I like the good student. And I had the paper with me for the AP's Terry Hunt, the write-up. I was like, I said it. He's on record. He said that he supported Maliki because the president needed to call Maliki. So then now the president, he's like, give that to me. goes out. Okay, so 2 years later, Charles Krauthammer, I'm sure you're all fans, he comes to the White House to do 3 interviews with President Bush and at the end of the administration. So we're sitting there, I'm behind him as a staffer does, in the back, just listening. And Krauthammer asks a question. He says, Mr. President, when did you know that the surge was going to work? He says, it's a good question. And I'd have to say it's the day that Maliki sent troops into Basra. And he said, and you know what, Charles? No one in my administration was with me, except for Dana. And so he remembered. And I think that if he were here and you were asking him questions about our relationship and why it worked, it was because I didn't have to wonder if he would support Prime Minister Maliki because I was there watching. And I do think that Josh Earnest has that same kind of access to President Obama. It's one of the things that President Bush recommended to Obama and I did to Robert Gibbs.
But in the course of the day, how many of the meetings would you normally go to of the president? The president is usually packed from morning to evening. How many of those
So it
meetings?
sort of depends. I would,
What was a
on the
typical
important
day?
ones, I would say the important ones, let's say that he was going to have to go to a meeting about a hypothetical bird flu.
Okay.
I'd send my deputy.
Okay.
'Cause I don't need to know about that today. But let's say there was another time that if he was meeting with the president of Ecuador, I want to be there.
So basically, you're doing the daily briefing every morning.
Yeah, we do a gaggle, which was an on-the-record, off-camera, let me tell you what I know right now. And also that was kind of a fact-finding mission for me to find out what questions they were going to ask at the briefing so that I could do more reporting.